So, right, there's an issue with the way composition is taught in photography. And I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying it's not enough. Because I see a lot of photographers teaching things like, here's a square, here's a triangle, and this makes a circle. And whilst I don't fundamentally disagree with what they're doing, because I think that kind of does make sense, what that lacks is that we're not, as humans, particularly interested in, oh, look, there's a triangle on top of a square. And whilst our brains can make sense of that structure, this is a sort of a two-dimensional way of thinking about how compositions go together. What we really need to do is train our brains to see, in any sort of environment or location, compositions that work together structurally but actually make sense. So when someone sees our photograph, it feels harmonious and it goes together. Let me show you this picture of the escalators at Canary Wharf Station. Now I'm going to explain this from the contextual composition framework, because this doesn't fit very well probably on the rule of thirds, and it doesn't really fit the shape theory that well. But what it does do is it sort of works visually as a photograph anyway, because we have foreground, which is like the bit before the escalators, and then we have the background, which is the sort of the roofing of the station. But what we have that makes the picture work is the escalators, because they're pointing in, they give us this sense of depth. But we know, because they're escalators, this is the key point, right? We know, because they are escalators, that they are going up or down. They are changing in height. This is what contextual composition is about. It's about how humans, we understand what the implications are of the objects that are in the picture. So we can abandon some of the traditional rules of composition that you may have, some of the basic ones that you may have been taught, because we can say, we understand that this is going up and down and further into the picture. We can see the diminishing lines of the escalators, but we know we've also got height here. So we get scale from our understanding that this is an escalator. It's not just about drawing the shapes and saying, oh, if it goes this way, then it's going that way. We need to have the context. An escalator goes up. The other thing that we have is we have that skylight above. That means that that's daylight up there, right? That's above. And I darken down the foreground more to make it clear that this is lower down. So we get the feeling that this is the underground, right? We're in the underground. And our brain works out immediately that this is probably some sort of station for something, because we've got these escalators coming down, because of the context of what those objects are in the frame. Let me give you another example. This picture has a very boring foreground. If we just looked at the foreground on its own, it's just paving slabs, okay? So we sometimes find that it's hard to find foreground elements, but foreground elements do not have to be such a big deal all the time for them to work. If the rest of the picture is strong and the context of the foreground makes sense. Here's what I mean. These are just paving slabs in the foreground, but they're not just any paving slabs. These are the paving slabs of London Bridge. And this is the Shard in the background in London. This is one of the, or perhaps the most famous bridge on the planet. Perhaps the Golden Gate Bridge is up there as well. But my money is on London Bridge as being the most famous bridge on the planet. So these are ordinary paving slabs, but they're not in any ordinary location. And because of the context, when the viewer views this picture, and in this composition, I'm using strong use of leading lines and so on, and the Shard is making it clear to our viewers that this is, in fact, London Bridge, which is actually one of the most boring bridges in the world. But it's just literally a straight line of paving slabs like this. And so in order to give it that context in the composition, I waited for someone to walk past. Not just any person. They had to be dressed ideally in black when they were going past, so their tone of their clothing would match what I was doing. It gave it that context. So they're walking over the bridge because, again, this is a bridge. People use the bridge, they walk over it. I could have done it with nobody on there, but I think it's stronger waiting for someone to walk past. And this is because it ties together the purpose. What is this thing? What do people use it for? Well, they walk over it like this. So having a lone person walking over defines the context again yet further for the viewer. And that's why we're more attracted to pictures like this that have meaning. The whole point is that we give meaning to all of the things that are in the picture. So the bridge itself requires a person, in my opinion, to be walking over it like this, because it makes it make sense to the viewer as to what it is and what it's for. And you still have to time your shots, right? Like I did here. I had to wait until he was in what I thought was exactly, or as close to exactly the right point that I could get him at, was when these converging leading lines came together like this. If you look at the picture, here's my point with this. It's not really perfectly balanced in terms of what we would call weight of objects in the picture. It's really heavily balanced towards the left. But the way I've used the leading lines and put the person in the middle sort of re-anchors the picture more to the center again. And because we understand the point of all of these paving slabs and these leading lines, our brain doesn't mind anymore. And we look at it and we go, okay, yeah, that works. It fits together. It makes sense. This seems like it's harder to do because I expect at this point you're saying, oh gosh, I get that. I hadn't thought of this. This is really different, but how do I do this? How can I do this kind of thing? Because it seems instinctively now obvious, but also potentially hard to do. Well, give me a minute. I'll get on to that. Let's cover one more of these and then I'll talk about how you do this. So this next example was taken maybe 2 minutes before or 5 minutes or something before the last picture that you saw. And it's just of the staircase going down. There's like a little viewing point to look at the shard. What I've done here is I've sort of understood that, again, there is nowhere for me to stand where the picture balances perfectly. This is one of the biggest common problems in photography outdoors, is that the perfect composition would probably require a drone or something to get into that spot. But my pushback against that is that the absolutely perfect balanced composition isn't the picture that you want to take, because when it's too perfectly balanced like that, it doesn't feel natural, because that's not how we experience the world. We want to get a reasonably well-balanced picture, but it's more important that the context of the objects in the picture tie together and make sense. Is that starting to make more sense now? So here, the viewing platform does balance out to some degree against the shard. The leading lines don't converge perfectly together in this picture because I can't make them do that. It's not physically possible. But because we've got this viewing platform with no one on it, it makes us feel like we want to walk down these steps onto that platform and look at the shard. And what I try to do is counterbalance the sort of the weight of the shard in the picture by making sure that there was quite a lot of staircase there in the foreground to kind of give that balance back. And we see quite a lot of the railing on the left-hand side to balance it out to some degree. But I don't want you to focus on that. What I want you to focus on is the fact that the whole point of that platform down at the bottom of the staircase is to look at the shard. And when we look at the picture, we understand that. It's not a case of just picking anything for the foreground or a stone or a big block of something or whatever. This is a viewing platform to look at the shard across the water. And we know that when we see it. And we want to go down and stand there and look across the water at the shard. So when we see this picture, I'm composing it from the point of view of perhaps a tourist or someone going by and saying, oh, look, there's a viewing platform down there to the shard. So when the viewer sees this, that makes sense to us. What I don't want to do is go down to the viewing platform and take a picture from there, because that is where story comes in. If I'm already at the location, the story's finished, right? The story, it's not a complicated story. The story is, you see this, oh, okay, I'll go down the stairs, stand on that platform and look at the shard. That is the story. It's really simple, but this is how we experience travel, right? We see things catch our eye. Oh, let's go over there and take, how many times have you done that? You've gone to visit somewhere, a town, maybe even in the countryside, and you see something and you think, oh, if we go and stand over there, and that's the start of that little story. That's what stories are in photos. It's you notice something and that motivates you to move somewhere else or do something, and it makes sense to you. So this picture, that's the context of the objects in the picture. So whilst you could say this is foreground and this is background, yes, that's correct, but they have context to each other. That's why it works. So what I'll do now is I'll just talk you through the exercises on how to do this and maybe a little bit more about why this works. What you do is you find the subject, right? And then you go and look and walk around the streets and find different things. What ties together with the subject? You want to find that foreground or other supporting element that matches the subject. And then you try to find the composition that reasonably well balances it. So in this picture of St. Paul's, the angle here, you've got the phone box in the foreground, which gives scale. But St. Paul's has been there for a long time, right? So if you're composing a picture like this, for me, what was really important was the reflection on the floor. To me, this was all about the reflection on the floor, because the building is so old, and we see like this sort of modern bust sort of whizzing past, and I blurred the frame a bit here or blurred the movement, because I don't want the bust to distract, but I also want to tie it extremely strongly to London. St. Paul's almost looking ghostly and eerie like this. And then the reflection on the floor, the reflection is the foreground element that ties the picture together. It gives that feeling, it's like an echo from the past or something to me, that it's just been there for ages. So it's finding something that can outlast all of the modern stuff and the old stuff. This has been here for such a long time. And I feel that that reflection in the water is what makes this shot actually work like this. So you see there, it doesn't have to be something that is a big deal of a foreground object. The same as with the bridge picture earlier. The foreground wasn't particularly dominant, but it was really an important feature of the picture still. So if you enjoyed this video, I have an architecture ebook in the description down below. It is free. All you need to do is sign up for my newsletter. It's really easy, and then it will come straight to you. That goes through some more of these compositional ideas. I also have an architecture editing workshop coming out, which is going to give you some of these raw files. You'll be able to edit along with me as I explain from start to finish everything that I'm doing and why I'm doing it, so you can learn to edit your architecture photos better if that's what you want to do. Check that out. It's in the description down below. It's either out now or soon. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know that this was useful for you, because it helps motivate me to make more videos like this for you guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.